Have you ever been on a D&D campaign and things got a bit violent?
At the trial of a 14-year-old boy who admitted to strangling a young Orangeville, Ontario girl and her brother, it was revealed the accused had been playing the game for 18 months, had in fact been a dungeon master of his own group for 5 months.
Yeah, okay, maybe not that violent. Although, let's be honest, it can get pretty close to that.
Wow, really?
And every time that happens, it's the GM's job to keep the players in check. But why is that? The answer is that in every game of Dungeons & Dragons, there are a few unwritten rules.
How did Rog get that curse? How did Rog actually become able to see Kalina? Rog imparts to you.
Even if information is said to only one character in-game, you should narrate the scene to everyone at the table, and the character will tell the rest of the party what he learned. If he wants to hide what was told him from the party, he usually has to actively state that he wants to keep the information as a secret. This usually translates to the game master sending a text message or whispering the information that the player wants to know. This rule can vary from group to group, but it's usually recommended for the GM to narrate everything that's happening to the entire party, rather than spending half the time texting only one player that wants to keep everything a secret. Players can pretend not knowing said information, and when that information is finally revealed, they would act as if they were surprised.
I can't believe you committed suicide. I cannot believe you committed suicide. How could you have done this? How could you have committed suicide?
That might not be the best approach, but usually is the best one for keeping the pace. So you don't have to stop talking at any point. You can always engage with every single player, and every single player can engage with the entirety of the story. Although it might be hard sometimes for a few players to distinguish what they know as a person and what they know as a character in the campaign.
Who are you? And what have you done with the children?
An excellent question, Damocus. Perhaps you'd like to ask Crunch.
What?
Oh, forget that.
Maybe some of us should stay while the others go.
Shut your fucking mouth, that's stupid.
Mostly for the same reasons. If you have 3 players at the top of a castle and 2 players in a dungeon underneath said castle, how do you go about that? You can narrate everything that is happening to the entire party, but again, it's hard to keep everything on track. Because of that, it's recommended for GMs to keep the party together so everyone receives the same amount of information every time, all at once.
Are we losing?
No, it's not a competition. The only winner is fun. We're having fun. I go to Tristram and I'm laughing and I pick him up and I carry him to the bridge. It's fun.
I cast Torvin's Flesh of Fire.
This is like the rule of D&D. The objective of the game is for the players to fight together to defeat the antagonistic forces in the campaign. Players fighting amongst themselves can generate a lot of conflict outside of the game. That can cause real players to start arguing with each other because, well, there's a goal they're trying to achieve. And getting on a fight mostly just detracts from the main objective. Even if you want to betray your party at some point or backstab one of the players in particular, eventually you have to give in and join the group. Because it's better to do that rather than try to fight everyone. You either die and have to do a completely new character, or for some reason the GM actually allows you to kill everyone, and now you have a table full of people angry at you for stealing the fun of the game. Those rules, all those rules, are presented not only in D&D, but practically every single RPG system. Breaking them means you're, at best, straying away from the intended design, and at worst, you're doing a bad job as a game master. The players should learn together, stay together, and work together. Battle Royale is a book written by Konshu Takami, and it's one of the most influential pieces of fiction in the last 30 years. And it's about a bunch of people trying to kill each other until only one is left. So, shall we turn that into an RPG? Here's the thing, no matter the system, what every RPG tries to achieve is an emulation of a cinematic experience. This is the true objective of the game. Not to have the party defeat whatever demon is controlling the land, not to rescue the princess from the castle, not to defeat the evil corporations. Everything works around making the story compelling. However, those same cinematic experiences are, by default, limited to only one type of movie. And it's movies about a group of characters who join their forces in order to complete a mission. Don't get me wrong, that definition is as wide as an ocean, and you can practically make every single genre of fiction into an RPG because of that. However, no matter how wide that ocean is, it's still only an ocean. It can never be a lake, it can never be a river, it has to be an ocean. My idea is to translate the cinematic experience that an RPG provides with its rules into a competitive system. I want a game in which the limit of the player's strategies is their own imagination. A game in which you don't just make alliances and betray other players, but every decision can have an emotional impact on you. I want a game where a betrayal feels like a betrayal. I want players to feel being backstabbed. I want players to strategize, to set a trap at the start of the game, only to be activated hours and hours later. I want them to tame the environment and use that against each other. That type of game is really hard to make. To be honest, it feels almost impossible to be done. But I wouldn't be making a video if I didn't believe I came up with some really clever solutions for some of these problems. Today is Devlog 00 of my tabletop Battle Royale project. We'll be starting small and only talk about the problems we'll have to tackle and how to organize everything that needs to be done. This series of videos will not only be a way for me to talk about the game and give my insights on how to solve the problems a game like this will present, but also I hope this might help inspire others who want to develop their own board games and RPG systems. I want this to be a useful guide more than anything else. Obviously, the idea of making a Battle Royale RPG is not the most original thing in the world. But what idea is original in this day and age, right? The question we have to ask ourselves isn't, is this idea original? But if this idea isn't original, how can we make it original? What we need to be sure is that the mechanics we are trying to implement in the game have not been attempted before in this genre. To figure what was done before and what wasn't done before, we need to do some. A great example of an attempt of a Battle Royale in an RPG system is a game called Survivalship Island. Although it's called an RPG, it's much more like a board game than anything. If we're gonna define RPG just by role-playing game, then yeah, sure, it's an RPG. But the game itself has some odd systems. One can call the pacing of this game way too fast. The game has this one action per location system, which makes it really interesting, don't get me wrong, and it's a very good tool to manage many actions at once. However, it limits a lot of what the players can do. But overall, it's a fantastic experience, and I really recommend to everyone that wants to try something out until my idea is released. Of course, only if my idea turns out to be as good as this game, which, honestly, it's gonna be pretty hard, but we have to have faith. Faith.
Have some goddamn faith!
In the same style of great systems that don't really fit with my idea, I want to talk about Classroom Deathmatch. It is also directly inspired by Battle Royale, but this one I have to really stretch it to call an RPG. All the characters are pre-made, the narrative is pre-built, you don't get to have that much control over everything. It feels much more like a board game. However, researching this game made me wonder why they did that. Why not make it so that players can build their own characters? There needs to be a systemic way to balance the game. This needs to be thought of, and thanks to Classroom Deathmatch, I had this insight. But my personal favorite one, at least from what I read, is the one called Shinobigami. I think I pronounced that wrong, but okay. And ironically, this is not a Battle Royale RPG. This is a ninja RPG, in which players don't necessarily have to fight each other. Oh, that's so cute. However, this game does have one specific mechanic that caught my attention, and it's the hidden information system. In this RPG, players have their own secret missions and goals that are given to them at the start of the campaign, and they can lie and form alliances to each other in order to progress on those missions. This is what I'm trying to achieve. In a game about backstabbing and outsmarting, you need a way to hide information from the other players, while you are also informing the GM of what you are planning to do. Granted, the Shinobigami system isn't that well thought out. You don't really hide information, people just can figure out where you are and what to do with you. It is really systemic, but not that cinematic. And at last, but definitely least, we have the Hunger Games role-playing game official site, which seems to be a lot more about the role-playing part and not so much about the game part. So now that we figured that we have somewhat of an original idea in our hands, we can move on with the rest of the project. When designing a game, be it tabletop or digital, there are many ways to start. A lot of people like to start with the setting and story. Others like to outline every part and work from top to bottom. But usually, the best way to start is the strategy I nicknamed bodybuilding. There are other names for that, I didn't invent that strategy, but I always like to call it that because essentially, in this strategy, you build a body.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
That means starting with the skeleton, then you build the muscle, the nervous system, the organs, and lastly, the skin. The skeleton being the most simple, bare bones mechanic of the game. It's the jump in a platformer, the combat in a Souls-like, the shooting in an FPS. It is meant to be as unpolished as possible so you can focus on the core mechanics. Basically, it's the prototype. I decided to focus on the main problems that needed to be solved in order for this idea to work. If we can find a solution for each problem, this idea might turn out to be possible. In a normal D&D campaign, the players should normally stick together. In a Battle Royale, however, players will want to stay as far away from each other as possible. So, we'll have to develop a way to make it easier for the GM to follow more than one storyline at the same time. There are thousands of ways to do this, but we also have to consider the fact that we need to keep the players engaged all the time. In an RPG, most often than not, the character creation is limited by the player's imagination, while the character progression is limited by the GM's imagination. You can have, for example, a campaign in which one of the characters becomes a god. Now, you can really turn a player into a god in a game like a Battle Royale RPG, nor unless you have a way to turn all the other players into gods as well. Also, what happens if a player dies? Is it an instant win to the other player? But what if I want to add some PvE encounters? If a player dies to a PvE encounter, does the other player win? That would only encourage players to sit around and wait until the other opponent screws up. Talking about hiding, How do we stop players from hiding or running away for an entire match? We want to engage competitors to fight against each other, and I really want to do that without copying Fortnite's Death Dome.
Got it. Jesus. We got in there, cinder blocks. $500,000 in cash.
We need to find a way for players to feel like they are constantly outsmarting each other, and for that to work, some information must be given in a way that informs only one player while not informing the rest of the table. For example, maybe a player just gained a Molotov cocktail, but doesn't want other players to figure that out. How does the GM inform the player that he has gained this item without informing the others? And yes, passing notes can be a great solution if well implemented into the systems, so GMs can write information easily and on the fly. But there are certain types of information that simple notes cannot transmit properly. For example, what if instead of gaining a Molotov cocktail, the player wants to create one? How does he create a new item that can give him a great advantage? All of that without informing the other players. Also, the act of passing a note already indicates that the player is planning something. Oh, and let's not forget, the game needs to be fun. If the entirety of the gameplay is players passing notes towards each other, the game will turn quiet, boring, and we do not want boring. Those are the three main problems we have to solve. As I said, later in the devlog, I do want to create a setting for this game because I don't want things to get too generic, but right now I need to focus on the mechanics. I know projects like this involve a lot of time, effort, and money, a lot of money, and I'm aware of that. But for these type of things, the hardest part is usually to take the first step. And in a few weeks, I will come back for part 2. If you want to keep following me on this journey, consider liking the video, subscribing, and feel free to give some encouragement and especially feedback in the comments. See you next time!